the incident that happened this morning. First of all, from the South African Police Services side, we can confirm that there was a shooting incident this morning at the home of the well-known Paralympic athlete Oscar Pistorius. At this stage, we can confirm that a young woman, a 30-year-old woman, did die on the scene of gunshot wounds. A 26-year-old male has been arrested and has been charged with murder. At this stage, he's on his way to a visit to the district surgeon for a medical examination, and he'll be appearing in the Pretoria Magistrates Court at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
4 shots, a locked bathroom door, and a man the world called a hero standing in the dark holding a gun. Valentine's Day is supposed to be about love. But in the early hours of February 14th, 2013, in a gated estate in Pretoria, South Africa, something happened that would shake the entire world. Not just because of who was involved, not just because of what was lost, but because of the question that has never fully been answered. Did Oscar Pistorius know who was behind that door? By 2013, Pistorius was one of the most celebrated athletes on the planet, the man they called the Blade Runner, a double amputee who ran on carbon fiber prosthetics, a man who competed at the 2012 Olympic Games in London alongside able-bodied athletes and made the world believe that nothing was impossible. And yet, in the middle of the night, in his own bedroom, he picked up a 9 pistol. He walked toward a closed bathroom door, and he fired 4 times. Behind that door was not an intruder. It was Reeva Steenkamp, his girlfriend, a model, a law graduate, and a woman who had spent that evening sending him a Valentine's message, a message he may never have read before he pulled the trigger. When police arrived, Oscar was screaming. Reeva was 29 years old. And from that moment forward, the question at the center of everything became one of intent, not whether Oscar fired the gun. He never denied that. The question was whether he meant to kill Reeva or whether he genuinely believed he was firing at a stranger hiding in his bathroom. The answer, it turned out, would take years to reach. Here is the story of Reeva Steenkamp and the night everything fell apart. Reeva Lee Steenkamp was born on August 19, 1983, in Cape Town, South Africa. She grew up in Port Elizabeth, raised by her parents Barry and June, and by all accounts, she was the kind of person who made rooms feel warmer just by being in them. She trained as a lawyer, graduating from Nelson Mandela University with a law degree, but her path shifted toward modeling and media. She appeared in FHM South Africa and was signed with a talent agency, but those who knew her consistently describe a woman whose ambition was matched by her warmth and her principles. Her friend and fellow model Gina Myers described her as someone who genuinely cared, who listened, who showed up. She had been dating Pistorius for just under 3 months when she died. The relationship was still relatively new, still finding its shape. Steenkamp was a real person, full of plans and warmth and a future she was actively building. She was not a footnote, she was not a detail. She was the center of this story, even when the world's attention kept drifting toward the man who killed her. February 13th, 2013 was a Wednesday. Reeva had spent part of the day working. She had a shoot scheduled, commitments to meet. By evening, she was at Oscar's house in the Silver Woods Country Estate, a secure, upscale gated community in Pretoria East. They spent the evening together at home. No big Valentine's Day dinner, no elaborate plans, just the two of them at the house. At some point during the evening, Reeva drafted a WhatsApp message to Oscar. It was long, emotional, and telling. She wrote that she felt unacknowledged, that she felt scared of him sometimes, that she did not always know how to handle his moods. But she also expressed love. The message, later read aloud in court, is one of the most painful pieces of evidence in the entire case because it shows a woman trying to communicate, trying to work through something in the hours before she died. Oscar later said he fell asleep early. He said he woke in the night, stepped onto the balcony to bring in a fan, noticed the bathroom window was open, and panicked. His estate had been burgled before. He said he felt genuinely terrified that an intruder was inside. He said he grabbed his pistol. He moved toward the bathroom. He did not, he later claimed, check whether Reeva was beside him in bed. He said he called out, warning the intruder. Then he fired 4 shots into the locked toilet cubicle door. Neighbors heard screaming, then silence, then more screaming. Estelle Van Dea Merwe, who lived nearby, told police she heard a woman screaming around 2 a.m., then loud bangs, then silence. This detail became one of the most contested points in the entire case. If a woman was screaming before the shots, Oscar's story of believing he was firing at a silent intruder began to fracture. When police arrived, Oscar was downstairs. Reeva had been carried down by him. She was bleeding from gunshot wounds to her head, hip, and arm. She was rushed to hospital. She was pronounced dead on arrival. The bathroom door showed 4 bullet holes. One of Reeva's fingers had been partially destroyed by a bullet as she cowered inside the cubicle.
Amy, as Oscar Pistorius spends his 5th day in the South African jail, police sources are leaking incriminating information to media, including new claims that he may have been using steroids.
The lead investigator initially assigned to the case was Detective Hilton Botha. Within days, he was removed from the investigation after it emerged he himself was facing charges of attempted murder in an unrelated incident. Forensic analysis confirmed that Reeva had been crouching or in a defensive position inside the cubicle when she was hit. She was not standing. She was not moving toward the door. She was cornered. 1 bullet struck her hand, which was likely raised in front of her body. The WhatsApp messages recovered from Reeva's phone and Oscar's phone were introduced as evidence. In those messages, as mentioned earlier, Reeva had expressed fear of Oscar's temper. She had also described at least one incident where she felt embarrassed by how he had behaved in public and had described his jealousy and anger. There was also the matter of a prior incident at a restaurant in which Oscar had allegedly discharged a firearm under a table when it went off accidentally. That incident, while not directly related, painted a picture of a man with a complicated and at times dangerous relationship to the weapons he carried. The prosecution also pointed to the physical layout of the house. Oscar had long legs when he wore his prosthetics. Without them, he was significantly shorter. On the night in question, he was not wearing his prosthetics. The defense argued this made him feel more vulnerable, more frightened. The prosecution argued that even without prosthetics, he was a physically powerful man, and that fear did not explain firing 4 shots through a door without a single verbal confirmation that Reeva was safe in bed. Motive, in the legal sense of why he fired, divided into 2 theories: intentional killing after an argument or criminally reckless disregard for human life. South African law would eventually determine which of those mattered most. The neighbor testimonies remain the pivotal flashpoint. Berger and Johnson maintained throughout that they heard a woman screaming before the shots. Oscar's defense brought their own acoustic and timing experts to challenge the sequence. The cross-examination was brutal. The science was contested, and it became clear this was not going to be a simple case with a clean answer.
Eyewitnesses to the incident.
The first count against the accused, count 1, is one of murder. The accused did unlawfully and intentionally kill a person, to wit, Reeva Steenkamp.
By the time the trial began in March 2014, South Africa was holding its breath. Going into the trial, many observers expected this to be straightforward. Either the judge believed Oscar's version or she did not. Either it was a tragic accident or it was murder. 2 clear options. But what emerged over those months in court was something far more complicated. Judge Thokozile Masipa, a highly respected jurist and only the 2nd black woman ever appointed to the High Court in South Africa, listened to weeks of testimony. Expert witnesses, forensic analysts, neighbors, friends, Oscar himself, who wept openly on the stand for days. His crying became one of the defining and divisive images of the entire trial. And then in September 2014, she delivered a verdict, that stunned almost every legal expert who had followed the case. Not guilty of murder, guilty of culpable homicide. Her reasoning was that the state had not proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Oscar intended to kill Reeva specifically, and that under the legal doctrine of dolus eventualis, the prosecution had not sufficiently established that he had foreseen and recklessly accepted the possibility that his actions would kill someone, even someone unknown to him. Legal scholars across South Africa immediately raised objections. The argument simplified was this: if you fire a gun 4 times through a closed door at close range, you must have foreseen that whoever was on the other side might die. The verdict was called a misapplication of South African law by multiple legal academics.
What we've seen is that money, you have money, for instance, in this country, you can be out, you can buy anything, you can buy your way out.
So began a process that would stretch for 3 more years. The prosecution appealed. Oscar was sentenced in October 2014 to 5 years in prison for culpable homicide. He served approximately 1 year before being transferred to house arrest at his uncle's luxury home in Pretoria. The leniency of both the verdict and the sentence sparked outrage. The Steenkamp family, who had sat through every day of the trial, were devastated. Reeva's mother, June, who had conducted herself with extraordinary dignity throughout, said the sentence was not justice. She continued advocating publicly for Reeva's memory and for the rights of women in South Africa. In December 2015, the Supreme Court of Appeal overturned the culpable homicide conviction. The court found, as legal experts had argued, that Judge Massipa had indeed misapplied dolus eventualis. Oscar was convicted of murder. He was resentenced in July 2016 to 6 years in prison. Once again, the sentence drew widespread criticism. The National Prosecuting Authority appealed again. In November 2017, the Supreme Court of Appeal increased the sentence to 13 years and 5 months, after accounting for time already served. This was the minimum prescribed sentence under South African law for murder with a licensed firearm. Oscar served the remainder of his sentence at the Atteridgeville Correctional Center in Pretoria. His first parole application in March 2023 was denied. His second application in November 2023 was granted. On January 5, 2024, Oscar Pistorius was released from prison on parole. He had served approximately 8.5 years in custody in total. He remains on parole under strict conditions until December 2029. In June 2025, he competed in an Ironman 70.3 triathlon in Durban. His first return to competitive sport since the shooting. The news was met with a deeply divided public response. Throughout all of this, June Steenkamp continued to speak. She published a book called Reeva, A Mother's Story. She has spent years fighting to ensure her daughter is remembered not as a footnote to a famous man's downfall, but as a full human being who mattered. Reeva Steenkamp wanted to be a voice for women who could not speak for themselves. She wanted to use her platform to talk about abuse and violence. She was planning to do exactly that in the weeks after Valentine's Day 2013.
Do I prefer a clean-shaven man or the rugged camel man? I'd probably go for the rugged guy. I don't like a man who takes longer than me in the bathroom to get ready. No.
She never got the chance. What happened in that bathroom in Pretoria, what words were said before it, what Oscar truly knew and felt in those seconds before he pulled the trigger may never be fully answered. The courts have done what courts can do. The law has run its course. But a young woman is gone, at 29, with a full life ahead of her. Reeva Steenkamp deserved better. She deserved to grow old, to do the work she cared about, to be loved without fear. So here is the question I want to leave you with today. Do you believe justice was served? Let me know in the comments, and if this story moved you, share it, because the least we can do is make sure Reeva's name is still spoken.